There's a lot of exciting things happening for Ford. How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric and welcome back to Out of the Groove. Midweek edition, I'm going to talk a little bit about Bristol, but most importantly, I'm going to talk about a couple of news stories that came out on Tuesday of this week. Both are involving Ford teams and Ford in general, so this is going to be a lot of Ford discussion. I'll start with the top announcement of the week, now that I've kind of taken a step back from the high that was the incredible racing we saw at Bristol Sunday and Monday. And I'll talk about the big announcement on Tuesday was that Ford announced that it was going to be running, starting next year in 2019, the Mustang in the Cup Series. Yeah, like these Mustangs, or like we've seen in the Xfinity Series for the last 6 or 7 years. Now, the timing of this comes at no real coincidence. Last season, Toyota debuted a brand new Camry, the 2018 Camry that they debuted in 2017, and they've been running since then. This year, obviously, Chevy has introduced the Camaro ZL1, which they've been running for the first time this year. And so, a lot of people, for merely since Chevy announced the new Camaro, a lot of people have been looking at Ford wondering, are we going to see any changes? Ford has basically been running the exact same body since the Gen 6 car was introduced back in 2013. Meanwhile, Toyota has actually had 3 slightly different body styles since then, and Chevy obviously just completely changed cars. So obviously, in an attempt to keep up with their closest competitors, Ford has chosen to swap out the Fusion with a brand new Mustang look. They're moving on from the Ford Fusion type look like this, which they've actually run across multiple generations of race cars since I think 2006 was when they first ran the Fusion. So the Ford Fusion has seen time in the Gen 4 era, the Gen 5 Car Tomorrow era, and now even the Gen 6 era, but they're finally moving on to the Mustang. And the question begs to be asked, is this the right move? From a marketing standpoint, I honestly don't know the answer. I feel like I see a lot of Fusions on the road, but I definitely see a lot of Mustangs on the road, so I guess only Ford knows what the right type of car to promote is. But from an actual competition standpoint, I'm actually a little bit skeptical of this move, and I'm not certain that it is coming at the best time. I mean, obviously, like I said, the Toyotas are making changes, and they seem to be making improvements. The Camaro is making a big change, which we haven't seen really a big improvement there yet, but we tend to think that by the end of the season, the Camaros will be better. So on the surface, yeah, it seems like Ford needs to change something to kind of continue to innovate along with the competition. Brad Keselowski, Ford driver for Penske, has been an avid supporter of Ford changing the cars, or of Ford doing something to keep up with their competitors. But I want to look at a couple statistics, primarily from this season that we've seen so far. Bear in mind, we are only 8 races into a 36 race schedule, not even a quarter of the way through yet, but it's pretty clear Ford as an overall manufacturer has been dominant when compared to Toyota and Chevy. Even though they're running the same exact type of car that they ran in 2013, they've been unstoppable this year. Kyle Busch is leading the points at the moment in a Toyota, but positioned 2nd through 6th, the next 5 of the top 6 in points right now are Ford drivers. And this is the best overall season organization-wise that we've seen from Stewart-Haas Racing in forever. They have 4 cars, all Fords, all very competitive, all look like playoff contenders. 2 of them have already won races. They've won 4 of the 8 races as an organization already this year. Stewart-Haas looks amazing. Team Penske has not won a race yet this season, but like I said, all 3 of their drivers are in the top 6 in points right now, and they've led laps. Blaney had the best car at Bristol this last weekend. And even Roush Fenway Racing, which has really, kind of not been very good ever since the Gen 6 era began. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. won 2 races last year and is coming off one of his best career performances at Bristol this last weekend where he got another top 5. And I'll talk a little bit more about Ricky Stenhouse in a moment, but I just tend to think Ford right now is looking the best that they have as an overall manufacturer in a long time. So is this really the best time to give in to peer pressure, to give in the pressure that guys like Brad Keselowski are giving you? Is this really the right time to make a switch and completely throw out everything they've been working towards with the Ford Fusion body to switch over to this Mustang? Because you look at the points, Chevrolet, which switched to the Camaro this year, the highest Chevy driver in points right now is Kyle Larson in 9th. That's right, the top 8 is only Fords and Toyotas, and the brand new Chevy with their brand new Camaro, nobody in the top 8, and none of the Hendrick drivers are even close to the top 10 in points right now, which is shocking. And while that might not all be due to the fact that they just switched to the Camaro, it's safe to say that a large portion of why they haven't run quite as well is probably because of them in the new car body. Now, it's hard for me to really take a definitive stance on whether or not I think this is a good decision for Ford, because most of us tend to think that by the end of this season, or maybe it might take till next season, the Chevrolet teams will have a handle on this new car body, and we expect drivers like Larson, like Chase Elliott, like Jimmy to be top 5 contenders once again, and we expect a lot of them to win races throughout the season. So while we haven't yet seen them make any super notable strides, it's still early in this season, so by the end of this year, Chevy could have 2 or 3 cars at Homestead in the final race. We don't know. So it's hard for me to make a real definitive stance on this. I'm just skeptical is all I'm saying. I want to know what you guys think. Do you think this is the right time for Ford to switch away from the Ford Fusion and go to the Mustang, or do you think they should have maybe continued with the Fusion for at least a little bit longer and let that play out? So let me know what you guys think there. This is a tough question for me. This is a tough one for me to think about, because we really, until we see what the Chevys really look like by midway towards the end of this season, you'd hate for Ford to make all the progress they've made this year with the Fusion to kind of throw that all out the window and start at square one again next year, because they look good right now. Harvick looks like one of the top championship favorites. Stewart-Haas Racing is looking like all 4 of those cars will make the playoffs, which I don't think has ever happened since Stewart-Haas has been around. So it just begs the question, is this the right time? Anyway, I'll let you guys decide that. Let me know what you think in the comments or on Twitter. The other thing I wanted to hit on today is another news announcement that came about Ford drivers, is that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. with Roush Fenway Racing, they announced the extension between 3 of their main partners, their main sponsors, through the 2021 season. This comes at a good time for NASCAR, and this comes at a time where Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is really starting to finally show some signs of what we thought he could be 5-6 years ago when he was in the Xfinity Series winning championships. We forget Stenhouse won, I think he won 2 Xfinity championships actually at the 2011, 2012 time, came into the Cup Series and obviously hasn't had the success he hoped for, but I think a large part of that has been the decline of Roush Fenway Racing. Ever since Kenseth left in the 2013 season, Carl Edwards left after the 2014 season, ever since that happened, Biffle's now gone as well. There's no veteran presence, and there hasn't really been a strong veteran presence there for a couple of years now. Roush Fenway Racing has been a shell of what it was in the mid-2000s. But this is a good sign to have Fastenal, to have Sonny D, and to have Fifth Third Bank commit to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at least for the next 3 years or so. That's a big deal. Because if there's one thing that Roush has struggled with in the last few years, has been sponsor commitments. You see a lot of races where Trevor Bayne's out there just driving the Ford EcoBoost car, and it's, you can just kind of tell that's not they don't have a super strong partnership deal with some of those teams. So to see Stenhouse at least get some firm commitments from some big sponsors, that's good to see for that team, because I want Roush Fenway Racing, Jack Roush, and that whole team to succeed, because they won back-to-back championships in the mid-2000s. And since then, they've been competitive for years to years, but since the Gen 6 car, they've just slowly declined until, the last couple of years, they've been basically irrelevant. Stenhouse got him a couple plate wins last year, which was big, but other than that, that's been the only bright spot they've had in the few years now of darkness. Not to get super dramatic or anything, but I like Roush Racing. I like what they do to the sport. They've obviously got a rich history with the sport. Jack Roush might be in the Hall of Fame this season if he gets voted in. So that's a good team, good organization, and it's good to see them have some good stuff happen to them. So that that's out of the way, I wanted to wrap up the show talking a little bit more about Bristol Motor Speedway. I talked earlier this week on Monday after the race, posted a video. That was exciting because that was one of the best races I've seen at Bristol, one of the best races I'd ever seen, period, in NASCAR. Probably the best race I'd seen this season, definitely. And it was interesting hearing a lot of your feedbacks. A lot of you guys are like, oh, it was a great race, but 90s Bristol, with Dale Earnhardt, his infamous incidents with Terry Labonte, or early 2000s even Bristol, back when the low groove was still the defined line, kind of like we saw this last week with the kind of had to manufacture by adding that grip strip, but still, we got shades of the old Bristol this last weekend, Sunday and Monday. And it's a shame that the rain, I went into this earlier this week, I don't need to keep talking about this, but it's a shame that the rain got in the way it did, but it was still a great race. And I agree with you guys. I wasn't the best. I was probably exaggerating when I said it was the best Bristol race ever, because I've obviously not seen every Bristol race. I've only seen clips of a lot of these old races in the 90s, but you're right. A lot of them obviously held a special place in a lot of NASCAR fans' hearts. My point is just from an overall racing standpoint, from the amount of comers and goers, you had the right mix of veterans battling with the right mix of young drivers or unproven drivers. So it's just, there's a lot of great things to follow in that race, which, you'd have to go back and watch some of those old races in really hard detail to kind of figure out how they compare. I just think, as far as modern NASCAR goes, or at least from the last 10 to 15 years of NASCAR, that was one of the best races I had ever seen in terms of just how much there was to take in, how many different drivers there were. I went from rooting for a different driver every 10 laps. Like, I'd be like, oh, here comes Bubba, go Bubba, oh, he's in the lead, yeah, and then he'd fall back and I'd be like, ooh, okay. Oh, but here comes Suarez into the top 10, oh, go. So I had someone to root for basically the entire time, but it was constantly a revolving door because, like me, I'm having to adapt. My favorite drivers now not in the sport, as I'm sure a lot of you watching, your favorite drivers have retired in the last few years. So a lot of us are trying to latch on to new favorite drivers, or are just watching the races for a love of the sport, just to see what happens and follow along. And so for that reason alone, it was very fun for a person like me who's just kind of taking it all in and having fun with it. So I thought it was a great race, but anyway, I have to keep this episode relatively short because I have a super busy week this week, and I'm not going to have a whole lot of time to dedicate to the show this week. I'm hopefully, and I say this because I don't know for sure, but I'm hopefully going to have an episode up by Thursday or Friday to preview this weekend's race at Richmond, but I can't say that I will for sure, so we'll see about that. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Follow me on Twitter at DexRacing. That's it. That's all I got. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you guys hopefully later this week. Have a great one.